Ladies and gentlemen, shall we start? Last call of panelists. Come
Уважаемые
and bring with you your headsets if you need. Professor Palam, we are waiting for you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the second session. Thank you for being here. It's a pleasure to moderate today's panel on the end of unipolarity, shifting power balances, and the future of multilateralism. We have a distinguished panel of experts with us today, and I look forward to a fruitful discussion. The description of the panel is quite thought-provoking. It is suggested that the era of Western-led global dominance is giving way to a multipolar world, and that the United States hegemonic moment fades, and China, Russia, India, and regional powers assert greater influence. Before we start, let's take a moment to reflect on what is unipolarity. You see, when did we decide that the world has become unipolar? And when did we start saying that this unipolarity is now collapsing? In these words, I hear narratives that are used by one of great power, and you know what kind of, am I right? And I'm not criticizing this point of view, but I would like to say that there are different views, and we are here to listen to these different views. Second, don't you think that the world is more focused on presidents now than on great powers? Didn't we shift it slightly towards not a power-centered world, but a one-person-centered world? I think that that second edition of his presidency has shifted dramatically the interface of international relations, and now we are more talking of the world that, let me say, more Trump-centered world, and is being and slightly shifted from being Putin-Biden-centered world. And the question is, would it become more DC, Putin-Trump-centered world? So with European presence, of course. A few words about procedures. Each panelist is given 7-10 minutes, and then I'll ask each of you one question, and then we'll proceed to Q&A sessions. Let's start, and it's great pleasure for me to introduce our first speaker is Mr. Ashok Sandrahar, who served as the president of Institute of Global Studies of India, and I think 2 years ago we've been together at the same panel. I was moderator and he was a panelist. So it's great pleasure to me, Mr. Ambassador. So Your Excellency, The turn is yours, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for giving me the floor at the outset. Let me take the opportunity of conveying my deep appreciation and gratitude to the Kazakh Ministry of Foreign Affairs and to the Kazakhstan Institute of Strategic Studies for the gracious invitation to participate in this conference. It has become an annual affair, so I'm delighted to be here for the second time, and also for the gracious hospitality. Friends, the very important theme that we are going to be discussing in this session is the issue of the end of unipolarity and the future of multilateralism. I will, at the moment, Mr. Chairman, not respond to the somewhat provocative statements that you have made about what sort of a world it is becoming, whether it is Modi, Putin, Xi sort of a world. Maybe that we can have in a question-answer session. But let me focus on the two issues of this session. First, in terms of the unipolarity. In my view, unipolarity could have been unipolarity of the US dominance, of the Western dominance, could possibly be said to have ended in 2001 with the 9/11 attacks on the World Trade Center buildings in New York and also the Pentagon building in Washington, D.C. If, however, there was any doubt that it would have been set to rest by the 2007-2008 international economic and financial crisis. So I would imagine that both in terms of security as well as economic dominance, the US and the West suffered a huge body blow at the beginning of this century, about 15, 20 years ago. Friends, the intervening years have witnessed a rise of different poles, of different centers of political, economic, technological influence and power. And I would suggest the advent of multipolarity. Not only has it witnessed this period, the last 20 years or so, witnessed the rise of Russia, China, India, as you have stated, Mr. Chairman, but also several other countries, economies in their own right, like Indonesia, Vietnam, Japan, South Korea, several countries in Europe, Brazil, South Africa, etc. Now, coming to the future of multilateralism, I think it needs to be recognized that multilateralism has served this world well for the last 50, 60 years. But of course, the last few years have witnessed a precipitous decline and erosion in the influence of multilateral institutions. I think the most obvious example in this case is the continuation of the Russia-Ukraine conflict. The UN Security Council has been ineffective, incapable of not only solving it, but not even being able to get a resolution for a ceasefire. Similar is the case with the Israel-Hamas conflict that has been going on now for a little more than 2 years. We have, of course, entered into a tactical agreement just a few days ago in which saw the release of all the Israeli hostages and about 2,000 Palestinian prisoners. But it is indeed a moot point whether this will lead to any long-term peace arrangement. Also, I think as far as globalization is concerned, it has acquitted itself rather creditably since the Second World War. But here again, the functioning of the multilateral trading system has come under huge pressure and has suffered huge erosion over the last several years, last decade or so. Tariffs are being used without any regard to provisions of the World Trade Organization. The most robust pillar of the WTO, which is the appellate body, was made totally effete and ineffective by the US not approving fresh members of this body. In fact, all instruments of global trade, economy, and finance are being weaponized today. During COVID-19, we saw the weaponization of the supply chains. Today, we have seen the weaponization of tariffs, of sanctions, of markets, of technology, of rare earth magnets, of critical minerals, of connectivity routes, and so much more. Friends, the worst sufferers as a result of the decline in multilateralism, whether it is in the political sphere or in the economic sphere, are countries of the global south. It is the weaker countries who are the biggest beneficiaries of a rule-based international multilateral order. Challenges of today, peace, security, realization of the sustainability development goals, climate, terrorism, pandemics, technology, AI, all these have gone into the background. Not much attention is being given to them. There is no focus on greenhouse emissions. The only attention the world is paying to are the White House emissions. And there are several of them becoming visible every day. Friends, no other way but cooperation and collaboration and multilateralism is the way out of the challenges that the world confronts today. If multilateralism was necessary when the world was bipolar in the first 40 years after the Second World War, when it was unipolar in the 1990s, I think it becomes absolutely imperative that we adopt the path of multilateral laws and rules. Today, the United Nations system reflects the world of 1945, 80 years ago. It doesn't reflect the world of today. The world has changed. It has to move on from a P5 format which existed in 1945 to a G20 format which reflects the reality of the world today. In 1945, 5 big powers had got the veto power. Today, the situation, as I've explained, in a multipolar world, the power is much more diffused, the world is much more equitable. So we really have to think whether we need to continue the veto. Is there any rationale for veto-wielding powers today? World is more equitable with more rising powers. Major challenge is that there is no alternative to multilateralism. In the last few minutes, let me say just a few words about India, about India's role in the world today and growth as it sees the evolving global structure. Friends, 10 years ago, India was the 11th largest economy in the world. Today, it is the 4th largest economy. Very soon, it is going to become the 3rd largest economy in another two years. Still, of course, there are many challenges it confronts. The challenge of inequality, the challenge of low per capita, but reforms are being continuously implemented. In fact, even during COVID-19, India went in for far-reaching reforms. The philosophy on which India operates is of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. That means the whole world is one family. That was the philosophy that informed India's G20 presidency in 2023, that of one earth, one family, one future. Friends, India's growth and rise is good not only for its own people, but for the global community. India walks the talks in this respect. It shared more than 300 million doses of its vaccines, most of them on gratis basis during the COVID-19 pandemic. Also, it has been the first responder to its neighboring countries and any calamities, financial, economic, or natural, that have befallen our neighbors in the last many years. be it in Sri Lanka, Maldives, Afghanistan, or elsewhere. Friends, India is ready to participate and collaborate proactively with the other multilateral institutions in the world to ensure a world of peace, security, stability, and prosperity. Thank you very much, and I'll be very happy to take questions and respond to any comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for your thoughtful and profound views. You know, the panelists are not expected to provide comprehensive and ultimate answers, but I know that you are a diplomat, but nevertheless, I would like to ask, you know, India is hedging risks with the Trump policy, and it made it move during participating in Shanghai Cooperation Organization. But my question is, do China and India have a long-term strategy of rapprochement? What is being done and what is planned to be done?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for this very important and interesting question. Let me put it this way. China is the second largest economy in the world. India, as I just mentioned, is today the fourth largest economy, and very shortly, in about 2 years' time, it's going to become the third largest economy. India and China share a border of 3,500 kilometers. We are neighbors. This border is undemarcated. We are in discussions, in negotiations with China. So it is imperative for both India, China, the region, and the world, for both these countries to have normal, peaceful, predictable, and stable relations with each other. What happened in 2000 when we had Chinese forces coming to on the line of actual control and occupying some territory which was seen to be India, that created a conflict. But now the attempt is to go back to status quo ante, to stabilize the relationship. And that is exactly what is being done. Let me mention, you did mention about Mr. Trump also. The rapprochement, the very cautious rapprochement between India and China started even before Mr. Trump came to power. In fact, even before the election of Mr. Trump took place in November 2024. This rapprochement started in Kazan, in Russia, on the sidelines of the SCO summit, when both Prime Minister Modi and President Xi met in October of last year. And this process was taken forward in Tianjin during the SCO summit recently. So discussions that took place in October last year to normalize relations were taken forward. So we decided that there would be direct flights between the two countries. That is already starting, in fact, from 24th of October. There would be visa facilitation between the two countries. There would be trade that would be normalized. There was a very important, what is called the Kailash Mansarovar Yatra, a pilgrimage from India to places in China. That will again be resumed. It had been stopped. So the point I'm making is that both countries realize that the period from 2000 to 2024 was not good for either them, their people, or the region. So they are trying to overcome that and to have normal, stable relations between the two sides.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Now I would like to invite our next panelist is Mr. It's not your first time here. I know you was moderator last year at the session with President of Kazakhstan, Mr. Tokayev. It's Mr. Eric Rudenschold. He's Senior Fellow, a Research Director of Caspian Policy Center. You know, Mr. Rudenschold, you look like a man who saw everything, who heard everything. But you see, it took me time to read Mr. Kissinger's book, like Diplomacy. You know, but don't you think that all of these great powers rhetoric belongs to the past? That we are passing news of threshold of a new policy with artificial intelligence and so on, and how this will change the map, the architecture of security. It's just, it's not a question, it's like maybe some points to think. So the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. First, I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me again to speak here. And I believe you've read my mind a little bit for my comments today. Ladies and gentlemen, I think the era of global affairs that's focused on great powers is coming to an end. Not with a single dramatic event, but through a steady, quiet redistribution of agency across the world. And nowhere is that shift more visible or perhaps surprising than here in Central Asia. For years, Central Asia was seen as a chessboard, a flyover zone, a periphery. Today it is becoming something quite different. It is a cluster of enfranchised middle powers. And the rise of Central Asia's middle powers is forcing us to really rethink what it means to look at great power competition. Kazakhstan and the rest of Central Asia, each in its own way, are now reshaping regional dynamics instead of being shaped by them. Kazakhstan continues to perfect its multi-vectoral diplomacy, maintaining open lines to Washington, Beijing, Brussels, Ankara, Tehran. It also has turned itself into a regional convener, hosting forums like this, talking about connectivity, water management, environmental issues. And you can witness the region bridging the Caspian Sea and the Black Sea, becoming an energy and transport hub at the very center of Eurasian integration. This is the political enfranchisement of a region once dismissed as an afterthought. These countries are no longer objects of competition, but are becoming the arbiters of it. And I think a clear example of this transformation lies in the Middle Corridor, the Trans-Caspian route that links China and Europe through Central Asia, the Caspian, and the South Caucasus. When Russia invaded Ukraine, the sanctions regime, which effectively closed the northern transport corridor through Russian territory, suddenly the world looked south across Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan, and Georgia. And what began as a logistical adjustment has actually become a strategic reorientation. Central Asian countries are coordinating customs reforms, building ports, digitizing trade flows, and they are connecting themselves directly to Europe and the Indo-Pacific. The Middle Corridor is no longer just a trade route. It is a corridor of sovereignty, a symbol of how middle powers can use infrastructure as strategy. In effect, these states have learned that connectivity is power. And this brings me to the broader evolution of multilateralism. For decades, we imagined the international order as a wheel, with the West largely at the hub and other states as spokes. Today, the geometry, in my opinion, has changed. We now live in a web, not a wheel. Power now flows horizontally through dense and overlapping partnerships. And Central Asia, I think, illustrates this perfectly. Think of the C5+1 formats that this region shares with virtually every power around the world. There's Central Asian symmetry, which connects this region's leaders to global ones. You have the Organization of Turkic States, which anchors the region westward through diplomacy and culture and trade. And you have Caspian and other cooperation platforms that anchor the region with Russia and Iran and China to the east. And as we've seen with the SCO and the CSTO, Central Asian participation comes at a cost of addressing this region's own interests, not just those of larger countries who participate in those organizations. This proliferation of minilateral formats or small focused partnerships reflect this new web-shaped global governance. It's pragmatic, it's flexible, and it's situational. It's no longer about blocks. It's about balancing networks. And in that sense, Central Asia is not a periphery of great power politics. It's a laboratory for the future of multilateralism. Just west of Central Asia is the South Caucasus, where we see both the promise and the peril of this new environment. The real challenge today is not ending war, but building a durable peace after war. The 2020 Nagorno-Karabakh conflict showed that external powers, whether they're Russian peacekeepers or Western mediators, can only do so much. Lasting stability depends on regional agency, on the willingness of local actors to own their security and their reconciliation. The same lesson applies to Central Asia. You have enfranchised middle powers carrying new responsibilities to cooperate, to manage disputes, and to prevent new sources of instability. Their sovereignty is strengthened not only by balancing great powers, but by balancing one another. And this regional enfranchisement is part of a much larger story across Asia. Across the continent, we see a concert of middle powers. India, Japan, Indonesia, Vietnam, South Korea, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Azerbaijan, all are hedging, balancing, and innovating. Each seeks strategic autonomy. None wants to choose sides. And this is what the new multipolar Asia looks like, a patchwork of agency, not an axis of allegiance. But there's a risk. We may end up with multipolarity without multilateralism, a crowded, contested space without shared rules. And again, Central Asia offers a model. Its states have shown that multivectoral diplomacy can be principled and not paralyzed, that it's possible to maintain autonomy without isolation. So what does that mean for the rest of us in Northern America and Europe and in East Asia, who've long been accustomed to leading global institutions? I think first, we must update our mental maps. The old division between great powers and small states is waning. Between them lies a growing class of middle actors, and they will increasingly determine how global competition plays out. Second, we must engage through dialogue, not directives. Partnerships like the C5+1 or the EU's Global Gateway will succeed only if they respect local agency and work in partnership. Third, we should treat connectivity as strategy. Rail lines, ports, digital corridors, these are not technical projects. They are the new instruments of statecraft. Finally, we must move beyond containment logic. Central Asia's rise is not just about balancing China or Russia. It is about the assertion of sovereignty in the middle spaces of the world, a quiet revolution of self-determination. So let me close with a thought. We are entering an age of strategic enfranchisement. Power today is no longer concentrated in a single pole, nor even distributed among all. It is increasingly relational, built through networks, partnerships, and credibility. And that makes the middle powers, especially those of Central Asia, essential to the future of order. They are small enough to remain pragmatic, but large enough to matter. They are learning to navigate a world of many centers, not as victims of competition, but as authors of cooperation. Their rise compels us to rethink what great power competition means.
Professor Rudenschuld, excuse me, but we are short of time.
Okay. Can I just finish one sentence? I think the world's center of gravity is no longer fixed. It is shifting, spreading, and flattening, from the Atlantic to the Caspian and the Caspian to the Pacific. And the challenge before us is to build a multilateralism that reflects that reality, one that recognizes just the great powers of the past, but the middle powers of the future. Thank you.
Professor Rudenschuld, you know, Kazakhstan doesn't belong to the axis of evil countries. We are not enemies of the United States. We even signed a declaration on strategic partnership. And you said that Central Asia in general is becoming more important to the United States. So the question is, why US trade tariffs are so high for Kazakhstan? Is a part of strategy of trading some benefits at the expense of Kazakhstan? So you've met Tokayev, I didn't. You've met Trump, I didn't. And the audience, I think it's interested why it was possible, it became possible. So what would you advise Mr. Tokayev when he meets Mr. Trump?
Well, I hope they meet soon. I'm anxious for that. They met briefly in New York. I think seeing them meet again in Washington would be a very positive step. I think, you know, the tariff policy is unique to this Trump administration. Its impact on Kazakhstan is not as direct. Most of the products that are tariffed are actually tariffs don't apply to them for this country. So there's a small number of things which do receive a tariff. Overall, I think the number for Kazakhstan actually is effectively quite low. But I think, you know, the Trump administration has used tariffs as a means of forcing a discussion, a negotiation. And I think Kazakhstan and all of Central Asia, for that matter, offers a tremendous amount to a Washington that is anxious to do business. Certainly strategic minerals, rare earths are a major point of engagement as sort of the gateway to the next generation of energy. The partnership between the United States and Kazakhstan has already been quite successful. The largest donors, investors in Central Asia and Kazakhstan have been U.S. corporations, and I think, you know, we'll see that that level of cooperation, I hope, grow with this particularly business-focused leadership in Washington.
Thank you, Professor. Our next speaker is Mr. Ri Jong-kook. He's Executive Director of Korea Central Asia Cooperation Forum Secretariat. Our panelist is a friend of Central Asia. My warmest respect.
Thank you.
And you know, we have both of our panelists who remained. Let's think. You see, Kazakhstan, Turkey, Azerbaijan, Uzbekistan. We have something in common. We are belong to Turkic family of languages, and we have special organization for this. But Kazakhstan, Mongolia, Korea, even Japan also have something in common. Yes, we belong to Altai family of languages. So why don't we have a special organization just for us? It's, you know, so...
That's the point what I'm going to explain today.
So the floor is yours.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to Director Shaim Mardov of Kazakhstan Institute of Strategic Studies for inviting me to this wonderful gathering. And today, as an Executive Director of the Korea Central Asia Cooperation Forum Secretariat, I would like to share my thoughts on C5 plus K, the future of multilateral cooperation. In particular, I'll focus on why the multilateral cooperation is becoming increasingly vital in today's rapidly changing international environment, and the strategic significance of Central Asia in this context, and also the Korea's own experience of cooperation with Central Asia. I prepared 8 sections, but I know I have time limits, so I try to skip or shorten. And so today, today's session highlights in this era of the end of unipolarity and the shifting powers of balance, it is clear that multilateralism must take center stage. In this context, Central Asia became indispensable to the future of multilateral cooperation. And I believe history of Korea and Central Asia cooperation, especially through C5K framework, offers a very timely example for us to reflect on today. I will skip the strategic environment and also the value of Central Asia because all in this room are experts in this area. So I try to focus on the history of the cooperation between Korea and Central Asia. But before that, I would like to focus on the rise of C5 plus 1. Yes. So in 2022, beginning with Russia, the Central Asian countries have convened a series of C5 plus 1 summit with major powers, with US, with China, with EU. And next year, we're going to have the C5 plus 1 summit with C5 plus Korea. This shows that Central Asia is pursuing actions to diversify its diplomatic relations while at the same time being recognized as an increasingly important actor in the evolving multipolar order. Korea established diplomatic ties with Central Asia in 1992. And over the past 3 decades, our cooperation has steadily expanded across the fields of diplomacy, economy, and culture. And also, as you mentioned, Korea diaspora has also served a vital bridge of our relations. And economically, our partnership has achieved steady and remarkable growth in both trade and investment. For example, in early 1990s, the bilateral trade was only $200 million. But in recently, it reached almost $9 billion. So it's just a simple example. And also the major turning point came in 2007 when Korea and Central Asia institutionalized their cooperation through the Korea Central Asia Cooperation Forum. This forum became a new model of cooperation for building a comprehensive partnership with Central Asia. Most importantly, Korea was the first among all 5 C5 plus 1 frameworks to establish a standing secretariat. The Korea Central Asia Cooperation Forum Secretariat, inaugurated in 2017, was created to ensure the systematic implementation of forum agreements. The Secretariat has focused its efforts on 6 key areas. You can see it on paper. And areas identified by the forum for advancing mid to long-term cooperation between Korea and Central Asia. One of the examples is the industrial modernization and diversification, transportation, logistics, healthcare, and tourism, and so on. Next. See, this number shows what the Secretariat has achieved during the last 9 years. 138 projects implemented, 55 forums and seminars, and more than 250 Central Asian delegates invited to Korea, and so on. Now I will turn on the Secretariat's core activities and achievements, which I will highlight in three common contexts. The first is cooperation, deepening cooperation across key sectors. Second is building multi-level governance. And third one is expanding people-to-people exchange. I will comment on a couple of the examples of deepening cooperation across key sectors. One is healthcare cooperation. In 2020, we and Korea and Kazakhstan developed comprehensive rehabilitation curricula covering 11 specialized subfields. And in 2021, clinical training programs were held in Korea. And 2024, Kazakhstan government officially adopted Korean medical curriculum into Kazakhstan University, and the Korea-Kazakhstan Rehabilitation Medicine Center was opened in Almaty. And next example is the field of fisheries and maritime. With the subsequent efforts by the Secretariat, an ODA project was launched in 2022 to establish and strengthen the National Fisheries Aquaculture Development Center in Kyrgyzstan. And about the transport and logistics, the Smart and Digital Urban Transport Master Plan and pilot project in Dushanbe, Tajikistan has recently been selected as an ODA project by Korean government. And about the layered governance, this is the governance structure Korea is pursuing now. And the Secretariat has supported this mechanism to ensure substantive cooperation, while also taking the lead in launching the new platforms such as think tank forum, just like this for Astana Forum, and the Korea Central Asia Business Council. Next one. We started think tank forum in 2022 with Uzbekistan. It started as the bilateral export dialogue between Korea and Uzbekistan, and later it was expanded to C5 plus Korea. The first forum was held in Uzbekistan, and 2024, and the second one is this year in Bishkek, Kyrgyzstan. In the economic spheres, the Korea Central Asia Business Council was launched in 2020 as the first multilateral economic platform linking Korea and the 5 Central Asian countries. The members are from Secretariat, Korea International Trade Association, and 5 national chambers of commerce. And also we have the people-to-people exchange and cultural exchanges. We are running lots of programs, invitation programs or training programs for young people for both sides. And also annually we host a lot of cultural events, including the music and concerts, and sometimes cuisine, and sometimes every year we host the Central Asian Spring Festival in Seoul. So this is my conclusion. The new Korean government inaugurated this year has set a clear national objective: diplomacy and security centered on national interest. It has also continued national tasks focusing on the principle of pragmatic diplomacy. To this end, the government seeks to diversify its diplomatic outreach, build upon the new Northern policy, and expand new global partnership. This includes strengthening cooperation with Central Asia under its newly envisioned foreign policy in this context. In this context, I think that the first ever presidential summit between Korea and Central Asian countries will be the historic milestone to accelerate our cooperation and generate concrete strategies for future. Most importantly, the Forum Secretariat is a joint body, not a Korean body, joint body of Korea and the 5 Central Asian countries. I would like to take this opportunity, the President Summit next year, to call upon all of us to demonstrate our shared will and efforts so that the Secretariat can further strengthen its functions and capacity, ensuring that the C5 plus K framework produces real and tangible results. Forum Secretariat will continue to grow into a central hub for building sustainable multilateral cooperation shaped together by Korea and Central Asia. I hope today's gathering will serve as another meaningful starting point in this journey. Thank you all for your attention. Rahmet.
Professor, we've been speaking for decades about uprising of right-wing forces and conservative forces in Europe. But do you see any sign of uprising of conservatives among Asian democracies? I mean, like appointment of a new prime minister in Japan. Will it have some applications on relations between South Korea and Japan? And do you have any signs of the same within society of South Korea?
It's a very good question, but very sensitive because I'm not a formal diplomat, and we have our ambassador in Kazakhstan over there. So I would like to ask for your understanding, but I know I have my own individual opinion on that issue, but I'm not in the position of the comment on the national policy or something, the political issue, because I'm in the director of the public organization. So I think, but there is a kind of a consensus on that situation among Korean people and also the Japanese people. But further, please forgive me I have to keep my mouth.
Okay, I think that South Korea also showed signs of interest in the middle corridor. I mean, middle corridor. But to participate in the middle corridor, you cannot bypass China. Do you have a strategy of cooperation with China in terms of middle corridor?
No, it's kind of a foreign policy of the new government. So I'm waiting for the formal announcement of the new government about the foreign policy, especially China, Japan, especially in the Central Asia. So that's all I can say in this stage. Sorry. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next panelist is Mr. Dorjalam Erdenetsogt. He is head of Center of Central Asia Studies of the Institute for Strategic Studies under the National Security Council of Mongolia. I have so many questions concerning gas pipeline from Russia bypassing Mongolia through China. Will it have some effects on geoeconomics of the region? But I want to give you a floor, and I ask to touch upon these questions in your presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Askar Norsha. My name is Eric. I am from Mongolia, working in the Institute for Strategic Studies of the National Security Council of Mongolia. Thank you very much for the invitation to this prestigious event, Astana Think Tank Forum. It's my first time participation here. Today I would like to focus on, as we see topic on the screen, and unipolarity and the shifting or transition process to the multipolarity. As we know, international relations consist of unipolar, bipolar, multipolar systems. In human history, there was a unipolar system as Roman Empire, Mongolian Empire, and British Empire. Before Second World War II, there was a multiple world. But after Second World War, the world divided into two political systems, led by Soviet Union and the United States. Because of collapse of Soviet Union, United States dominated the last almost 20 years as unipolar world. But during this time, United States ignored the Russian national interests and expanded NATO to the east, which brought Russia, China closer together. In 1997, Russia and China signed joint declaration on building of a multipolar world, a new international order, which was the beginning of the idea of multipolarity. Terrorist attacks September 11, 2001, and the global economic crisis 2008 facilitated a transition process from unipolarity to multipolarity. Meantime, the countries such as of the global south, Russia and China, rapid economic growth of these countries facilitated the transition process. Also, globalization changed its nature and has begun to shift to the deglobalization. Nations have shifted to regionalization and institutionalization, preparing a new model of the world order. We see the institutional tendency from high-level meeting summits, Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and BRICS. The main driving forces behind the creation of multipolar world today are Russia and China. The emergence of new centers of political, economic, and security powers is having a significant impact on the creation of multipolar world. The world economic trend is shifting from west to the east, from north to the south. New centers of transport, logistics, industry, and technology are emerging, and the center of gravity of the multipolar world is concentrated in Eurasia. The Eurasian region is becoming a key space for a multipolar world and multilateralism. The emergence of mechanisms in the Eurasian region that can compete with similar Western institutions is accelerating the formation of the multipolar world. Financially, we can compare BRICS with the International Monetary Fund. Politically, Shanghai Cooperation Organization can compete with the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. Militarily, Collective Security Organization can be compared with NATO, so on. The emergence of new centers of power based on Islamic, Turkic, and Eastern civilizations in Eurasian regions is having a positive impact on formation of multipolar world. A decline in the share of the G7 in global economy, the transition of BRICS countries to national currencies, and the de-dollarization trend of the economies of the global south are accelerating also the transition process to a multipolar world. Russia is becoming a key center for encouragement in promoting the values of multipolar world. In 2023, Russia declared its goal of creating a multipolar world in its foreign policy concept. During Russia's presidency of BRICS in 2024, 5 new countries were admitted to the BRICS. Russian energy capability and Chinese economic power are having a major impact on transition from a unipolar world to multipolar world. If military power was once the main factor for the survival or existence of any polar world, now it's expected to rely on economic power. In the future, on technological power. For example, whoever can dominate in military affairs with disruptive technologies has a high probability of easily defeating his opponent. Artificial intelligence and cyber attacks can also undermine the readiness of strategic weapons. Any newly emerging polar world needs to be able to compete with other polar worlds in terms of military, economic, and technological capabilities. Although United States does not want a new polar world to emerge, a multipolar world such as Russia, China, and the European Union is expected to emerge in near future. Thank you very much for your attention.
You know, we live in 21st century, but some countries started to tell us about some historical lands, historical heritage, and so on. And you know, just to be sure, I've seen the map of Mongol Empire. Do you have territorial disputes with Central Asia?
Mongolia is a peaceful country. Nowadays, we have a very good relation with all countries, including with the regional countries in Southeast Asia, with our neighbors. We have no political issue and no territorial disputes with anyone. Thank you very much.
You see, it was a joke just. You see, you belong to a panel when all of panelists belong to a country that has C5+1 platform with Central Asia, and your country doesn't have its invitation to you. Just join us. And what prevents Mongolia from being active in Central Asia?
Geographically, Mongolia is part of Central Asia, but politically, last 2-3 decades, Mongolia provided active political relation with the Asia-Pacific region, particularly with the countries in Southeast Asia. Last 2-3 years, especially Central Asia is providing C5 plus summit. Mongolia просто завидует вашим успехам. Извините.
They're just envying to a great success. Sorry.
C5 partnership, and maybe there is a possibility to cooperate in this framework, like C5 plus and plus Mongolia or something like. Maybe it's good for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. You see, unfortunately, we are out of time for Q&A sessions, and my colleague from other sessions, they kindly asked me to stop. And so I want to thank our speakers for their valuable insights and for your answers. So please join me in thanking our panelists with a round of applause. Thank you.